Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Pwnery's Week in Review. Pre-Christmas edition? Something like that? Yeah. Episode 28. Half a year, and then some. Jesus. Why?
Since how you're aged, are you going to do a Christmas version?
I am considering it, but as intros go, we have our panelists. We bring you 5 stories of the week. Unfortunately, this has been a bit of a short week in terms of real meaty stories, so I don't know how long we're going to be able to do this today. But we'll do it anyway, because that's just what we do. So anyway, this is good morning to Scott. Good morning to Tony of the New Watch podcast, right? There was a name change.
Yep. Name and kind of format, but that's a little harder to do because me and Jimmy are being Jimmy.
Mm-hmm. So I made the changes to the server to reflect the new show, which is just, a reformat, rebranding. But go ahead and tell them about it.
There isn't a lot to tell except for we kind of want to go back to what the early watch started at, or at least was with like the first a little more news-centric, firearm-centric, especially.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps have guests, panelists come on, pose this, but it's in the works. Beyond that, it's not going to be a hell of a lot. And that's about it. We figured how we got fairly tightened up doing the early watch the past few months. And we're trying to bring that part to the original watch, new watch.
Okay.
There was a whole lot of lag, silence, crap. So long at the time.
Yeah, I mean, this all started, so a short, brief history lesson. Once upon a time, there was a site called Gun Channels. Some of you know of it, some of you may not. And the creator of it had a show that he would do called the Daily Gun Show. And he was trying to find what best time of day to do it. Sometimes it would be in the middle of the day around lunchtime. Sometimes he would try to do it in the evenings or prime time or late night. Then he tried to do it in the mornings. And it had like this certain format that sort of worked. And when that sort of died off, there was this gap to fill because the members of Gun Channels got used to this routine of jumping in and getting their information for the day or the week or whatever. And it would also attract new viewers just through like YouTube metrics, which would bring them into the site or whatever. So we used to jokingly call it like the freshman class of whatever year it was, because we started noticing new people would come in, and some of them would just be like viewers or lurkers, and others would be actual content creators. Like one of the best years that came up was probably the year that like Ghost and Clover joined, because they came in curious, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and then they sort of hit the ground running with it, and they've had pretty modest success so far. So it's not for everybody to do that, but it's refreshing to find new faces and new voices and stuff, which is funny because guys like Tony and I, we sat in the shadows the whole time, either as panelists or just listeners, and we were like, oh, we're never going to do a show, like nobody wants to hear what we have to say. And then what ended up happening was the early watch was formed to fill in the hole for the Daily Gun Show, and then Jimmy got abducted by aliens for the first time, probed repeatedly. So in his absence, it was either that or it was his internet died or something, like connection issues or whatever. So then I was asked to come in with something similar to sort of fill in the gap and then just like put in things that might, you know, make it interesting. So then I started Good Morning Gun Channels, which was, I want to say it was like 70 or 80 something episodes. I did it for a while. And what was kind of weird was like thinking back on it, I can't believe I got away with it because I would set it up and broadcast from my job every morning. And I would run it right up until noon, which is when I would hand off to the Daily Gun Show that moved into the afternoons. And then after the Daily Gun Show would be over, then everyone would jump back over to the Google Hangout that I had running, and we would rerun another video as like the lobby chat for the rest of the day until I got off of work at like 5 or 6 o'clock. So like it was a pretty good thing for a long time. And then when the early watch was able to go back on, I was like, sweet, I'm out. So like I didn't have to do it anymore because I was sort of floundering it solo for the longest time. But what I noticed was is the Daily Gun Show in the morning would start off with a few basic stories, and then he would have panelists come in whenever they wanted, and then they would discuss a few things, and it was sort of it. But he had enough things to talk about that it ran the full length of the show. And then later on, when the early watch started, the first time, it was sort of that, but it was more focused on just the panelists that host the show. And occasionally they would bring somebody in. And then they would add like a quiz to just sort of keep things, you know, keep you thinking type of a thing, which was good. And then when I got to do the morning shows for a while, I sort of followed the same template, and then I added something like this day in military history. And then that evolved into this day in history. It was military centric, but it had other things added into it: births, deaths, celebrities, whatever, just to fill in the time. And now we've got the second coming of the early watch, and I guess it was like trying to get your feet wet again, figure out, you know, what fits and what hits. It's an old Jeep
Well,
term, by the way. And
uh,
now you've got the new watch, which is honed in and refined to what you actually want it to look like.
the bit on the early watch, a lot of time went into listening to old shows and figuring out what worked,
Yeah.
what didn't. That's where we want to hang it. We've still been doing it and experimenting with it with the reformation of the early watch up to now. Decided to rename to kind of get away from the early watch name because there is a little bit of cloudiness to the name because of the alien shit disappearing.
Yeah. Also, one person never showed back up again.
Hmm.
Mr. Knives.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, he's got his reasons, right? So, supposedly he's a little technologically stuck with whatever he uses to get on. And for some strange reason, like he can't get Discord to work, which I don't see how. Like I've taught complete strangers who have never touched it before how to use it in minutes. But he threw his hands up and he's like, I can't do this. I can do Instagram, but I can't do this. I'm just like, whatever, fine. Do your thing. But it's funny that you mentioned. Oh, by the way, Tony, you're gonna have to shout into the mic a little bit. I forgot to tell you that earlier. Um, one of the things that was kind of funny was you were talking about how you had to watch old episodes to sort of see what worked and what didn't. And
Yes.
one of the long-standing jokes that almost all the shows had, mornings, afternoons, or whatever, was, and I know he's on, he's going to listen, and he's going to see this, he's probably going to jump in here shortly, but it's, don't put Night Strike on the panel.
Huh.
That was the joke.
The sheer fact that we're going to be covering bump stocks, you know it's going to show up.
Oh yeah. Well, oh yeah, I did put the topics in the subject line. So,
Actually, Night Strike is uh, the reason for a lot of funny moments in the old show
oh
because they
yeah.
tell shut the fuck up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean like Johnny Carson had Ed McMahon for a reason. Like Walter Matthau had Jack Lemmon for a reason. Like Night Strike does bring things to the table on the show, whether it's comedy or legitimate content. Like we just jokingly say it, you know. We're not trying to be mean to the guy. It's just it was funny that it became sort of like a rolling joke between a lot of shows. And it's like I know he took it in jest, you know, like he knows we weren't trying to like hurt his feelings or anything.
Oh no, man, I love Night Strike.
Mm.
I had a great time when we met.
Watching him roll backwards after he shot your 4570.
Weird shit. Um, but on the shows, sometimes it gets irritating.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm prone to lashing out rashly. But it's still funny,
Mm.
which makes it worth all the hassle in the first place. But that whole damn thing with, and I'm not going to say everything that we discussed privately, Jimmy and
Mm-hmm.
I, that sort of thing is why I am opposed to having people on the show. I want to stay in control of the whole show all the time. And when you have other people on, sometimes they're pushing their own agendas. I'm good enough at drifting off on my own. I don't need help.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, for instance, like talk shows, right? Um, you will see preparation in the green room. So, like, what they'll do is, if they know they're gonna have a guest on, they sort of have like this prerequisite of things to talk about. So they know, like, they sort of build the K rails around the lane to keep you in it, kind of a thing. Which, if you know who you're going to have on ahead of time, like well ahead of time, you could do that. But if it's kind of spontaneous, you're sort of at the mercy of whatever they might blurt out. So yeah, I totally get that.
That we're still discussing that one because I'm still opposed to it.
Hmm.
It's not like we're having real difficulty running an hour and a half or 2 hours. So
You know, I say this after every recording here on Saturdays, but I go into these with this anxiety, this level of anxiety that it's not going to make the full time. And I get a little nervous about it. And then we get through the show, and I realized we got to 2 hours. Like, I started wondering if maybe it was too long, and I did a couple of abbreviated shows, and those were okay too. But I'm, today, for sure, I'm not sure. So, leading up to the stories of the day, like the format typically is, personals week in review, and for once, I want to be greedy and go first because I don't know how much longer my voice is going to hold out. And
yeah,
Sam of
go ahead,
Anarchy's out in the audience, and he was
go
asking me how
ahead,
I'm doing.
go
So,
ahead, man. I didn't have much of a week to review, so
yeah, well, the trailer thing, but so personals week in review. Like, where do I begin? Um, I'll start from now and work my way backwards. That's probably easy. Um, Christmas is coming, as most people are aware, and I'm an electronics e-tailer in a way. So I build machines, I do a lot of quality control work. Um, I still have the rare ability to do component level repairs on electronics, like capacitors and resistors and things. So, sort of a lost art. But always around this time of year, the orders and return volume is insane, you know? It's like regular business, one return for every like 40 or 50 orders. It's kind of common. Well, that's fine, but around this time of year, we're doing 30,000 orders a day. on a pretty short staff. And so the returns are just as high, you know? So it's like, for the last 2 or 3 weeks, I would have to back order builds for several days just so I can keep up with the amount of intake on returns, because I have to quality control and check and process. And uh, the way Amazon does it these days, there's you have to dispute every return now. Amazon returns the money to the buyer as soon as they print the shipping label, regardless of if the seller gets the item back or not. So a lot of times you get these dishonest people who will send you back a box of bricks or just whatever to make the weight. Or they send you back something that's completely destroyed or unsellable, or just whatever, right? So a job process per return used to take me anywhere between 30 seconds to a minute because they were easy. I just type in, what I received, how I received it, and what I'm going to do about it in terms of like restocking fees or shipping charges or whatever, and life would go on. Well, nowadays, I have to take anywhere between 3 to 9 high resolution photos of what I received. I have to do what's called a safety claim, like safe-T. I don't know why they say it that way, but that's the way they have it. And I have to dispute the return, like on a categorical level. So now each return takes anywhere between 10 to 20 minutes because of the process of editing and captioning photos and everything. It's turned into like a YouTube channel in terms of work and editing, which sucks. And then I still have to play catch up with the builds, which I didn't actually successfully do until Thursday. And I had been 2.5 weeks back ordered. Some of it was due to the fact that I ran out of parts. Like I told my boss, I'm like, hey, I need these, like I need these cases, I need these controllers, or I need these drives, or just whatever I needed. And I'm like, they're not here. I can't build what you keep giving me orders for. So they were like, we can't get them here for a week because trucking is shit right now. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a company called Central Freight. They're one of the biggest trucking companies in the middle of the country. And they were in business for like 95 or 96 years. We didn't even know about it until I saw it on Fox News, which was shocking because they didn't call anybody. They just announced on the news, we're going out of business. Today's the last day we're doing pickups. And they didn't call anybody. And we use them a lot. So I told my boss this, and he went into like DEFCON 5, right? And we had to find another trucking company like overnight. And we still couldn't get our stuff over for like 8 days. So the back orders just got worse and worse and worse. So I got all this going on. I'm going into work slightly early or late if I sleep in because I'm exhausted. And then I stay late. I come home and it's dark. I got to deal with dogs and retarded family and whatever, right? And it's just exhausting. And then in the background of that whole thing, I'm sort of juggling a relationship at the same time, which abruptly ended horribly yesterday. Like, terribly. And most of you know me well enough to know my character. And, like, the things I was being labeled as are just unbelievable. It was almost like I was being attacked by somebody on a meth-filled rage. And the more I think about it, the more unfortunate it is because this person is an opioid addict, like a narcotic addict, painkillers and whatnot. Like Rush Limbaugh doesn't hold a candle to this girl in terms of the kinds of narcotics she has to take, right? She's addicted and she goes through withdrawal and she becomes this bipolar violent thing. And at the time, like, you're trying to help them or whatever, and you sort of try to overlook these things. And I should have known better, like my educational background is psychology and psychology of women and relationship therapy. Like, I went into school because I was fascinated with how crazy people can be. And I just ignored it. Like, I was like, she's different. Nah, she's different. No, she's not. She was actually the worst one. And it's unfortunate because a couple of the guys here on the server, they got to meet her or know her, and she rubs off as a pretty, you know, cheerful person. But they don't know about dread and despair and disease and all this crap that keeps weighing in on her, and she's always screaming about, you know, the worst case scenario. And it started off as a small avalanche from about 10 days ago. And it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And it just came to a head yesterday and just blew up in my face. So I was just like, well, that was bad.
Given your history that I know of,
Hmm.
not a lot,
Yeah.
but enough, I suggest you start throwing your freaking minnow into a different fishing hole.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, I just seem to gravitate towards crazy people. So it's unfortunate because, you know, if any of you read my social media, which I try not to air out my dirty laundry too much, but I did it yesterday, and it's to my friends only. So like, if you're on my friends list, you'll see it. But I kind of just like put everything on the board. It was like, okay, in the last couple of months, I've done this, 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 and this, and this. I've invested this. I've done this. I've burned bridges to make these things happen. You know, I've lost a couple of friendships trying to convince them that she's not crazy, just stuff like that, right? And at the very end, I was like, but I'm the one who's selfish, and I'm the one who's a monster. And I'm like, nobody agreed with anything that I said at the end of that post. They're like, are you crazy? They were like, reread your own post. You're none of those things. And I'm like, well, why do I feel like I've just been told I am? Because I was told I was. So anyway, to try to not like go all fucking Jenny Jones and Dr. Phil, because like I'm over this, right? I slept fine yesterday. It sucked, but I slept fine yesterday. The worst thing of my week is my boss. My boss's wife showed up to work Monday and Tuesday, and she seemed a little under the weather. Not crazy, but just a little bit sniffly and sneezy. And I didn't think much of it. And then Wednesday, my boss comes in wearing a mask on his face. And I'm like, what, are we having a ninja convention at work? And he was like, well, my wife was sick and I don't want to catch it. And he's like, I think I might have. So I'm like, huh. Thursday, he shows up to work and he looks like death. Like he's in his office. Now he's Chinese. So, you know, his face, if I say Chinese, you can visualize a certain type of face. When an Asian person's face is swollen, they're super Chinese, right? Like their eyes, right? And that's what he looked like. And he just looked like death. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing here? Go home. And he's like, no, I have to be here. I'm like, no, you don't. All he did was sit in his office with the lights off and slept at his desk all day. And then every once in a while, he'd get up and walk around the shop. And I'm like, stop spreading your germs and go away. I'm like, last year your wife got me sick and I carried an upper respiratory infection for months after. I was like, go away. So Friday, he wasn't there. And I'm like, good. He understood, right? His wife was there. She seemed okay. Her son was there. He seemed okay. My boss walks in at like 1 o'clock and he doesn't quite look like death anymore. And he's like, I'm fine. I'm all better. And I'm like, uh-huh. And then I got that bomb dropped on me, you know, relation shit. And got home, popped a couple of fucking Christmas ales, and went to bed. Woke up this morning. Guess who's sick now? So I get to deal with this all weekend. I hate when people show up to work sick. And they're like, oh, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. It's like, I don't care if you're fine. You're going to get the rest of us sick. Fuck off.
And that's why you should call out Monday and then tell your boss, well, I wouldn't have had to call out Monday if you hadn't come in sick.
I'll be fine. I'll be fine because I want to give it to George.
George, the one fucking bright spot in your job,
It's that.
the most talented linguist I have ever met in my life. Well,
Yeah, but the problem is he only knows how to use the word fuck.
Yeah, but he knows how to use it in more ways than anybody I've ever met.
Yeah, he's mastered it. Like, he has used it as every possible thing in the English language. He's used it as a noun, a pronoun, an adjective, a prepositional phrase, an expletive, an onomatopoeia. Like, he's used it as a comma.
Till I heard him, I thought I was the master at using.
Special
I had to
Forces
take a
guys.
bow for that one.
Yeah, Special Forces guys are a special breed, that's for damn sure. So anyway, yeah, that was pretty much my shitty week in review, and it ended with me getting sick. And it's really funny. My lawyer, she's 51, and truth be told, she's a good-looking woman. She really is. And she was a Navy girl. And when I first met her, she's what, 8.5 years older than me, right? When I first met her, I met her through a Facebook community, and she took a liking to my political, I guess, editorial type posts. And every once in a while, I'd catch these these pictures of her from her past when she was in the Navy, and I was like, damn, she was really good looking, right? So anyway, fast forward, I got to know her pretty well. Sold her a dog. Um, Sort of consoled her when she had to fight cancer. She did get over it, which is cool. And yesterday she just, kept trying to be like a shoulder to cry on type thing. And she was like, that girl's going to come back. And I'm like, no. And she's like, no, trust me, that girl's going to come back. And I'm like, no. I don't think you understand. So I like showed her a copy of an email that I got in my text messages. I was like, she's not coming back. Like, this was evil. And she was like, no, she'll still come back. She's like, just trust me on this. And I told her, I'm like, even if she does, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, this is the first time where I got finality thrown in my face, right? And it was like, there's a good way to describe this. If any of you have ever read the Walking Dead comic, not the TV show, the comic, you will know what I'm about to tell you. You get to the end of the comic and you scroll down and you go down, 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 down. Because of the way that it was written, there are pages that are blank. And you keep going because you know there's something down there because your scroll wheel tells you that there's still a whole bunch more place to go. And then all of a sudden it says the end. And you're like, what? The story that led up to those pages didn't tell you that it was about to end, right? And then you're just like, no, you know what? I could do a TV reference. If you watched and liked Firefly, and you watched the first season of it, and then you were waiting for the next season, and it never came, you have this emptiness, and you're just like, I want the next season. What the fuck, right? So, like, I'm sort of in that boat right now. It's like, I know what she's going through, and I know she's very angry and lashing out, and I know she's saying cruel things out of just rage or whatever. And, uh, this is how she reacts. Like, I could just brush it off.
Be sure you're not watching Deadwood instead of Firefly.
Right. So, I'll tell you what the straw that broke the camel's back was. I knew I wasn't going to get into this, but I'll just do it anyway. So I'm 42, and I had this personal goal of beating my dad to the age where he had me. He was 44 when he had me. I was like, I got to beat him. Well, I thought I was about to. And this person talked about this at length, and I thought, cool, we're on the same page. This is going to happen, right? And then all of a sudden, yesterday, she goes to her lady parts exam. And the first thing she talks about is getting a hysterectomy. And I'm just like, ooh, what happened to all that shit you've been telling me for the last couple of weeks? And all of a sudden it was just like, nope, I want all of it out. And like, when she first told me that, it was the day before. and I didn't answer because I was driving. And she hates when I text and drive. And she can always tell when I'm doing it because it's full of typos and shit. So, like, when she told me she was going to go, and she knew that she had, like, a cyst or something that she had to get looked at, she was like, I'm going to go tomorrow, and if they're going to find anything, I'm going to ask about a hysterectomy. And I was like, Jesus Christ, that's pretty final, right? Like, you can't, there's no takebacks with that. And the only thing I could type out while I was driving was like a sad face. Well, it turned out to be an angry sad face. And then I couldn't text because I put my phone away. And I'm driving. And I don't have the ringer on or anything. And my iWatch battery was dead, so like I can't do text to speech. And I'm just like, whatever, I'll deal with whatever she says when I get home. Well, I get all these messages, and it's like, I can't believe you're not responding to this. How could you be so selfish? This is my body, and they could kill me, and yeah. I'm just like, wow. I'm just driving. I didn't know all that was coming, right? So I finally sat down and text back. I was like, aren't you the person who told me texting and driving is dangerous? Oh, sorry. I'll talk to you later. I'm like, wait a minute. What about all that shit you just said? You know? It's like, I'm just supposed to forget all that happened, right? So, yeah, she's gonna be an empty nest at 34. Whatever. And it was like, that was probably the straw that broke the camel's back. And it all started because I couldn't answer my phone in time. And it was just like, you know what? Forget it. I was like, you're nuts. You're just nuts. Like instead of
now.
yeah, well, I mean, instead of reflecting on yourself and your own flaws, you're going to attack and attack and attack. And it's like everything that you said that I am is exactly what you're doing.
She does the same shit you do. You automatically go to the worst possible conclusion.
Yeah, but I
You
don't dwell on
have
that.
any-
See, the
You
thing
are.
is I don't dwell on it. She dwells on it to the point of getting sick. And I'm just like, me, I just say this is what could happen and this is the worst that could happen. And it's like I'm just aware that these things could happen. But I don't sit there and agonize over it like she does. I mean, I'm telling you, dude, to the point of projectile vomit, she agonizes over that kind of crap. And I'm just like, no more. No mas. I can't take it. So I'm back to square one. It cost me quite a bit of money. But, you know, live and learn, right? I'm an idiot. So anyway, that's my week in review. You guys do yours. I know yours isn't big, Tony, but you did do something. We talked about it.
Yeah, I bought one of them trailer kits from Harbor Freight and I assembled it this week. That ain't
And you
anything
wired
real
it.
spectacular. Well, that's part of assembling it.
And you sort of had to shake off a bit of ring rust in the process, right?
Yeah, I'm used to that physical labor shit. Not to mention, it took me fucking longer to wire it than it should have.
Yeah.
Considering I did that shit for a living.
By the way, like I know you put it together. Did you connect it to the Suburban and make sure all the lights work?
I checked all lights with the battery charge.
Oh, okay. You just touched them, touch each lead or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember how to do stuff. It's just that I ain't as agile as I was.
Low dexterity day. Like that's becoming a thing with me more and more.
Just wait.
All right, so Scott's last week. Your week in review last week, you already had the wolf, right?
Yeah, I hadn't got to shoot it though.
But you did now.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
It shot pretty damn good. No major malfunctions. Had one light primer strike, but I think that was because it was Fiocchi ammo.
Mm-hmm.
And it probably was just an overly hard primer.
Yeah, see, for me, the worst ones are CCIs in terms of like hard shell primers. But when they do go off, they go off. So it's like I had that problem one time with my 44 Magnum. And what had ended up happening was when I changed the grip, it had a Hogue grip with the backstrap exposed. I I replaced it with a tamer grip that covers the backstrap from a 500 Magnum. And I don't know if I did it or if it just was never tightened down, but this tensioning screw on the bottom of the butt of the grip was loose. So it wasn't putting a lot of tension on the hammer. So when I cocked back the hammer, it went back real easy. When I pulled the trigger, it didn't really smack the transfer bar with authority. But yeah, I remember like probably 2 weeks after I got it, every round wouldn't go off. And I'd open the cylinder and I'd see a little dimple, but it didn't go in very far. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? This is a performance center gun. It should be perfect, right? Well, found out the tensioning screw was backed out, so I tightened it in and I overdid it. And then it really smacked with authority. So then I back it off a little bit and put a little drop of Loctite on it, and now we're good. But yeah, for me, it was CCI primers. Winchester primers are soft. Tula primers are really soft. There's one other one I can't think of. Maybe it's the Fiocchi ones. But I haven't used very many of those, so I can't tell you. But I know the CCI Magnum ones are very hard.
No, anything Magnum, I think, is going to be a hard primer.
A bit. It's a hotter compound too. Yeah, but the shells are. Yeah, you're right. The shells are thicker too. You went sort of clothes and camo shopping too, right?
Yeah, I bought some camo.
But
Well, one thing they said was new was not new.
at all.
So, going back to Sportsman's Guide. But I recently got kind of obsessed a little bit with the Italian Vegito camo, which is a pretty unique pattern, but it works really well for where I'm at.
Oh yeah, I could totally see that. Let's see if I can get a good shot of this.
But the funny thing is, one of the actual surplus camo I got has stars on the collars. So I'm pretty sure this one didn't see much use.
So
or hard use, say.
it looks like this for those of you who are wondering.
Of a certain rank.
So I've got a picture up of that camo with the star on the lapel. But this is basically the camo pattern you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. There you go. Figure I'd give you guys a visual along with it. So they sent you... You got one that was surplus used, which was exactly like they advertised. And then you got a new one that was surplus super used.
Yeah. It's in worse shape than the actual one that was advertised as used.
And did they get back to you on that yet?
I'm going to send it back. They send it with a tag that you just stick back on the box over the normal shipping one, and off it goes.
Yeah. You have to let them know ahead of time, or they just take it?
Yeah, I'm going to let them know ahead of time.
And be like, the fuck? Okay, so, sorry I'm clearing my throat. I'm catching my death slowly is what it is. Also, for those of you who are considering a unique AR-15 build, right now, thanks to Scott pointing it out to me, AIM Surplus has the Wolf T91 12.5-inch upper in stock right now. And I would have bought it had I not doled out almost $1,000 for testing supplies for a person I'm no longer involved with. So my money is gone, and I can't buy it now. But if you want one, go get one. AIM Surplus, Wolf 12.5. Go get it, because they do not stay in stock very long.
No, I may order one myself.
I gotta have this. I gotta have it.
That's what credit cards are for.
I know, but I'm pretty stretched out after Christmas shopping, and truth be told, this cost $90 more than the 12.5-inch AR-10 upper that I'm trying to buy from Moriarty Armaments. Like,
Yeah,
I
but it's
fully
different
intend
drive.
to build that. Like, I've got the lower already built out now.
Yeah, but it's also piston drive.
I know. Like, I want to do both, and I may still end up doing both. But I was talking to Jaime last night. He jumped in after you left and went to Zeke's. Um, strangely enough, man, he kept me up till like 2 in the morning. But yeah, we were talking about my defeat, right? And he was asking me if there was any rifles I wanted to build next year. And I thought about it, and I'm like, yeah, there is. I just don't know if I'm going to go through with it anymore. So, like, my original plan, which I probably talked about earlier this year, was I wanted to build a 20 or a 24-inch, if I could find it, 350 Legend. And the plan is I was going to use a Boyd's Autumn Camo laminate stock set. So it's like black, brown, weathered gray, and orange, like bright orange, like foliage orange, right? And I was going to build it out to look like a Russian PTRD anti-tank rifle because Jaime sent me a who makes this thing? I think it's Strike Industries, cookie cutter break, which sort of looks like a PTRD barrel, break, just smaller. And I was going to take it and I was going to have the bore milled open a little bit more so the 350 bullet can pass through it because right now it's only for 308. And I was going to put it on the end as like the pièce de résistance, right? And that was the build I wanted to do. It's going to cost me roughly $1,200 to do it because the stock set's like 350. The upper I want's probably about $400 or $500 now, and then I wanted to put a pretty monstrous optic on it. But I don't know. Like that's one, the 12.5 308 on the polymer 80 lower with the SBPDW brace that I still want to do. And that's going to be a really expensive build because I want to top it off with Elkin Spectre DR 1x4. I think that would be like a really nice package. And then what else? I think that was it really for AR builds. I think I just wanted to do those two. But, I'm still always looking to build up my Milsurp collection too. So like I put the two Mosins on the wall earlier this week. And it's kind of a nice like spy versus spy type thing. Like the PU sniper is very dark and the M44 carbine looks like beechwood. It's really light. So they complement each other well on the wall. But I don't have any by 54 ammo, so I can't go shoot them. Can't shoot my Swedish Mauser because I still don't have the adjuster for the rear sight. Oh, yeah, here's a call to action. If any of you know where to get an M38 Swedish Mauser sight adjuster, the rear sight slider with the button, let me know in the comments. Email me or leave a comment in this video. The email address is in the description of the video, but let me know because I'm stuck at a 100-yard rifle until I find that, and it'll bounce after every shot too. So there's that. I think that's really all I got for that, right? Something like that. Yeah. So let's get into, I guess, the news of the day. We've got 5 stories for you. I don't suspect that they're going to take very long to talk about. Like this was kind of a thin week for me news-wise. Like I usually do the show prep the night before and I read up on everything, and I just couldn't find anything that I thought was worth talking about to a huge degree. But the last story we have for you today is actually going to be kind of fun because we get to like what if it to death, which is cool. So anyway, first story I've got is the Fifth Circuit has upheld the ATF's bump stock ban. And for me, my issue with this is they're trying to throw away the definition of what a machine gun is, which makes no sense to me. You know, a machine gun is one trigger pull to allow it to fire on an open bolt, mostly, on repeat fire, as long as you hold the trigger down. So it's one action to have multiple reaction, right? Whereas a bump stock, it's an assistance device to allow your finger to pull the trigger faster. But it's still one trigger pull per shot, per action. And yet they said, no, this is a machine gun now. And I'm like, show me where on the bump stock the full auto option is. Where is that on the safety selector that makes that thing full auto? That actually works. You know, the one thing I never got a chance to see or try was how would a bump stock work on an AR equipped with a Fostech Echo trigger? Like, how fast would that be?
If it would work at all.
Well, I'm sure it would work. Because, well, you might be onto something. The reset might be too quick. I don't know.
It definitely probably have cycling issues.
I don't know. I'd love to see it, though. Like, I remember, what was it, Iraq veteran 8888. He did a video of, he had a Fostech Echo triggered equipped AR, and Jerry Michalek had an actual full auto AR. And they both, like, mag dumped at the same time. And you know what? Eric wasn't that far behind. And I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. But if he had an Echo trigger on it and the bump stock, he might have beat him. But then again, the cyclic rates on a full auto are set a certain way to keep it from destroying itself quickly. Like, fun fact, fun story, the American M60. If you look very carefully at the top cover and the way that it mechanically sort of works, it's just a ripoff of an MG42, which, you know, had the nickname the German buzzsaw. But when we copied it, we copied the feed system, the top cover, and we slowed down the rate of fire to increase barrel life and reliability. And I mean, it's still used to this day, isn't it? In some cases. So, obviously that works. Thank the Germans, right? Blue
the
Origin,
Germans
thank the Germans.
are still using the FG42.
Seriously?
Isn't it? Yeah,
Well, I mean, I
just
thought they call it the MG3 or whatever now.
Yeah, same gun.
Yeah.
Just mod.
For 308.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the one Jared built, isn't it?
His is kind of like a bastardized
Half and
version of
half.
it. Yeah. I don't even know if he's fired them yet.
No.
Hey, I gotta jump, guys. I'll catch you later.
See you later. Alright, so yeah, bump stock ban still in effect. So, if you had a boating accident, continue to have a boating accident, obviously. I've never owned one. I've never really wanted one. And it was kind of one of those cases of, well, if I'm not allowed to have it, maybe I should have it. But I never got one. What was the point for me? Like, I blow through ammo fast enough already.
Exactly.
So, second story of the day. San Francisco's mayor, her name is London Breed. And I just thought, that's kind of an awkward name. Anyway, she got into the news a while back because she had defined her own mask mandates. And she went to a huge party where nobody was wearing a mask. And she was dancing in the middle of the crowd. And her excuse when she was confronted the next day was she was feeling the spirit. It's like, oh, okay, so the rules don't matter if you're feeling the spirit, right? And right now, in her town, city, people are feeling the spirit of flash mob robbery, basically. That's the spirit they're feeling. They're feeling like they could get away with anything they want because nobody's going to stop them. And you probably saw it. Like, I think it was like 80 something people or 90 something people rushed Nordstrom, I think it was. And they parked 10 cars out in front, left the doors open, went in, flash mob, robbed the place, ran outside, got in the 10 cars, and took off. It was like the scramble in Too Fast, Too Furious, right? Like, it was organized crime on a biblical scale. Somebody had a forum and organized this. They probably had shortwave radios. They knew exactly where, when, how, and where to go and to take everything out. And yet, she's not doing anything about it. And then she turns around and she says, well, this wouldn't happen if the retailers would increase their security countermeasures. Wait, what? You know what we call that in psychology? Denial of the victim. You're blaming the victim for being the victim. So, it's San Francisco. And I think we talked about this a week or two ago. But the question is what would fix that problem? And for me, the answer was simple. They need a real-life Dirty Harry with a 44 Magnum. That would stop it. If you have castle doctrine and you're legally allowed to protect yourself, your home, your castle, your business, your vehicle, and all points in between those places, then it stands to reason that if somebody broke in wielding a hammer or a crowbar or something, and they break into your establishment and smash your glass, you don't know if they're coming after your glass or your skull. Fill them the fuck in. Right? And after one or two instances of that, it would cease to exist. Because people are like, I'm not going in that shop. They will fill me in. Right? So, this is the problem that they have. They've defunded the police. They've demonized the police. They've neutered the police. And now they're saying, well, it's your own fault for not upping your own security. But that's not the problem in San Francisco, according to this mayor. The problem is, she's declared a state of an emergency in response to fentanyl overdoses, drug overdose deaths in her town. Let's ignore the flash mobs. Let's ignore the complete lack in lawlessness in the city. Let's completely ignore the older stories of people defecating everywhere. And they even had that poo tracker with little brown tags that completely littered the entire city area of San Francisco. Let's ignore all that. Let's ignore the fact that you have injection sites now so people can shoot up cleanly under surveillance, whatever, right? And, what was it? 600 people have died from a drug overdose in her city this year. Now, if I went to heyjackass.com, right? The total number of people killed year to date in Chicago, 827. So, she's got drug overdoses that are almost on pace with Chicago's violence and lawlessness of homicide. And if you guys didn't know about that site, I'll share it with you here. It's, let me pull it up, and screen share, and here. Here you go. So this website's called heyjackass.com, illustrating Chicago's values. I found this site many years ago, and the guy who does this is brilliant. He even has a YouTube podcast where some, like, active nights, he will go live and he will share the police radio scanner during the night. And it's frightening how active the radio is in Chicago. But, like, this site is brilliant because he breaks it down at an elemental level. And I can only think that this guy started this site uh, as a college credit thing, you know? Like, there was a commercial for an audio-visual class about 20 years ago where the guy did, like, the most vulgar car commercial, and it was called Big Bill Hell's car lot or whatever. If you YouTube that, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's absolutely hilarious. But, like, he did it as a college assignment. And it's like, if you look at this, this guy is a statistician. He's very good at it. He's got like shot in the assometer, carjackorama. He breaks it down by like ethnicity, the actual neighborhoods in Chicago, animals that were hit by blind fire. He's got this one called shot in the junkometer. 50 people this year so far. 50 people. Selfie-o-meter, where you're negligent discharge into your leg, 37. But you have 50 in the junk. It's like, I don't get it. Anyway, yeah, this guy, pure genius. But the point is all the crime doesn't matter, and all the poo doesn't matter. It's drug overdoses. That's the problem. That's the state of emergency in San Francisco. San Francisco's being led by an idiot. And those people who keep putting her into office, you're a representative of that idiot. So you sort of get the government you deserve. Sam of Anarchy says he's looking for a Polish M95 magazine? Or is that the actual gun he's looking for? You see it in the chat? Oh, one of these. Wow, that's kind of a weird looking one. It's, that slide sort of, like the chunkiness of that slide sort of reminds me of a Beretta PX4 Storm, which as a shooter is atrocious. I'm sorry, it was terrible for me. Anyway, next story. You guys remember Nicholas Sandman? Covington kid. Was at a rally of some sort. Native American dude gets in his face. Starts banging on a drum. He just sits there, sort of stone-faced and stalwart. But they said that he was a terrible person because he like made this smirking face. I guess he had resting smirking face, right? And all the news outlets basically attacked him. Defamation of character, libel, slander, you pick your name, whatever. Well, he started suing all of them. And he has recently settled out of court with NBC. Now, I remember that he sued CNN to the tune of $220 million. And they settled. And it makes you wonder, well, how much did he get? I don't think they ever disclosed how much he actually got. And this is sort of more of the same. NBC has settled, but they didn't say how much. So, like, my joke was, you remember Nicholas Sandman, so the question is, how much? I guess we'll have to wait to see what washed-up NBA player's house he buys in the near future, huh? But the best part of this story, which you actually led to before we went on air, was Kyle Rittenhouse has the same lawyer now. And he's doing defamation lawsuits. And he has a lot of defamation suits that he could win. And I jokingly said this, and you did correctly point out that it can't happen right now, but it would have been nice, is if you were going to go after somebody for defamation, why don't you go after the absolute biggest and worst offender? Kyle Rittenhouse versus Joseph R. Biden. Because that's the most powerful man in America right now, next to Nancy Pelosi. Yes, I said she's a man. But you can't. because the president can't be sued while in office, if I'm not mistaken. So he has to wait. But then again, he can win other cases right now and just go down them one at a time until he gets to Biden. And then that'll be like the last domino to fall. Like, the kid's never going to be wanting for money ever if he wins these cases. He can do whatever he wants with the rest of his life. He could be a nurse, he could be a lawyer, he can do whatever he wants. Or he could just rest on his laurels with all his money. Don't know. Hire security to make sure creeps don't creep up on his sister, because apparently she became a meme overnight the day he was acquitted or found not guilty. Anyway, payday. Sandman got a payday. Very curious how much that is. And you know darn well that you're probably going to hear some lame story about IRS tax audits for these guys in the future. They're going to be like, oh, you got money from CNN. Oh, you got money off of these politicians. Well, we're gonna pull an Al Capone and bust you for tax evasion or something. You know, this will come back up. I'm almost certain of it. All right, next story. Scott brought this one up. Pretty good, actually. Shamed and removed former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. The man who masterminded the deaths of, was it 11,000 elderly people? Something like that? Kept sending them off to nursing homes, unprotected or whatever, and they all died. Then he turned around and he would hold daily press briefings as if he was the President of the United States. Now, I understand New York City is one of the biggest cities in the country. It's Gotham, you know? Like, if something happens in New York City, it can sometimes affect the rest of the country. I get that. And if you look at the way that the New York City elections are run, if you win New York City, you win the state, right? Like, you can't avoid that. There's like 12 million people there. So it's like they're all just crammed in like sardines. The Great Society, right? We're going to stack them on top of each other. Well, anyway, he would hold these press briefings. He would be arrogant and defiant and sometimes kind of rude. And then he promoted his own book. Like, he self-promoted a... Okay.
Keep an eye on it.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. I actually sent them to do that. Anyway. Shit, now you just completely derailed me. Oh, so he writes a book about his masterful handling of the COVID pandemic. And then he defiantly fights the charges of he had these old people killed. And he was grossly negligent. Just all this stuff, right? And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, well, we can't nail him for that. And all of a sudden the sexual misconduct thing started coming out. And that stuck. Boy, did that stick. The one thing in a liberal's playbook is they try to demonize you as something that they are before you catch them out. Gee, it sounds like this girl that I just sort of ended. Anyway, they try to say that you're sexist or you're racist or you're homophobe or you're transphobe or just you're a phobe of something, right? Well, he got a taste of his own medicine, didn't he? Because women started coming out of the woodwork about all his misbehaviors and unwanted advances. And look where it led him. He got kicked out of the office of the governor of New York. He got kicked out of the mansion. He got voted off the island. He was the weakest link. Goodbye. Right? All that. Well, he made $5 million off of his book that apparently nobody bought. So I don't know how he got the money. Maybe the only thing I can think of is he wrote a book and a publishing company paid him so they could be the publisher. Like, a guy like me writing a book, I would have to find a publisher willing to print my book, and I would have to pay them, plus set up a contract for royalties, and they would get some, and I would get some for every book sold. For a guy like Andrew Cuomo, as influential as he has publishers tearing down his door saying, ooh, ooh, pick me, we'll pay you $5 million if you let us print your book. Because that's how celebrity works, right? Well, he made $5.1 million. And he has been forced to return all the earnings from his book sales by the Joint Commission of Public Ethics, which is fantastic. So that means the New York Attorney General is like, you're not getting any of this. You must return this. You used your office like a whore and your celebrity like a pimp to make money. Now, what does that sound like to you? Have you been paying attention to Nancy Pelosi lately and the fact that her husband and her have been doing insider trading for the last couple of years and have been making money hand over fist? It's kind of the same thing. This is a gross abuse of power in office. Like, the guy was shamed, he's been removed, and now he's about to go broke. Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
Oh, he's not going to go broke.
He'll go slightly more broke.
And what it is it's also a way book deals nowadays are how politicians get that dark money.
Yeah.
They use it as, a clearinghouse.
Hey, what is the symptom?
Hang on.
Because there was a case of some lady that wrote some children's book. I think she was from the Philadelphia mayor. She wrote some children's book that nobody wanted, and she made the city buy the book. So it was like a kickback.
Yeah. Sorry about that. It's like they're trying to do me a favor because I told them I need them to go get my gel caps and shit, so I don't want to go out in public. Anyway, yeah,
It's a government kickback scheme.
yeah. I mean, what's going to be the last chapter in Andrew Cuomo's book, in his book of life?
Well, he's claiming he's going to fight this.
Right. He has to. It's a public image thing.
Well, the thing is, how much is he going to spend to try and fight it and probably still lose?
Millions.
Exactly.
Because his lawyers will know that they have a losing case, and then they're going to turn around and they're going to milk him for as long as possible to keep it going, even though they know they can't win, to make as much money as possible.
Yep.
All right. Last story of the day. We are going through these really quick. So, do you remember cancel culture got real big last year, and they kept running around getting rid of monuments, Confederate monuments, all over the country. And yet, there is a giant bust of Vladimir Lenin, I think. I think it's Lenin. I want to say it's in Seattle.
Yeah, Seattle.
And it gets to stay. It gets to stay standing. But Confederate monuments, probably the biggest one is Robert E. Lee's statue in Virginia. It's over 40 feet tall. It's huge. It's of him riding a horse, because he was a cavalryman and a general, obviously. And if you don't know the story about Robert E. Lee, you should learn it, because the guy was brilliant. Like, he was the first person chosen by Abraham Lincoln to lead the Union Army, and he very politely declined. He was grateful for the opportunity. He thanked the president, but he said that he had a duty to the state of Virginia and its people over the country. And because Virginia was anti-federal overbearance, he felt obligated, because that's his state, to defend his state's interests. This guy also emancipated all his slaves, let them all go. He educated most of them. And, he fought on a side he knew would probably lose. But he was a man of principle. And even after the war, he was never brought up for war crimes. He was never prosecuted for war crimes. And then he went on to teach political science and stuff in college or at a university. Everyone thought he was going to be the next president of the United States. And he didn't want it. He was a pretty humble guy. Anyway, they took down his statue in Virginia. That was the last giant, domino to fall, so to speak. So they took it off its pedestal, and they found a time capsule in the base of it, right here. So this time capsule this statue was assembled, I guess, in 1887. And this box right here, was in the base of it once they removed the man on the horse part of it. This is the granite base. And it's a metal box, probably bronze or pewter or something. It's probably lead brazed to keep, the elements out. And we had this, what's inside. Because the granite pedestal was 2,000 pounds. And the box was 20 feet high on this thing. So it was up in the pedestal. And they dropped the statue on top of it, basically. And their biggest concern is we hope it's not damaged by water. Because if it's lead and you do it properly, you can seal it. If it's pewter or some crappy alloy, it might decay over time, pinholes and water gets in or whatever. And I'm reminded of I think it was the 57 Belvedere that was buried in a time capsule in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I think it was Tulsa. And they dug it up 50 years later, and it was just a rusty derelict because they didn't know how to seal that even 50 years ago. Actually, it's probably 60 now, but that's a really great story, too. If you look up the buried Belvedere, I think they call it Miss Belvedere, you'll see how ruined it was. But then if you follow the history of the car after it was taken out, you'd be amazed how preserved it had become because some guy found some new technique of removing rust without destroying the metal. And you can even see the original gold paint underneath. It's shockingly good how well restored that thing is. And it's sitting in a museum now. The metal's so thin that they dare not touch it because your hand will go right through it. But it's at least presentable. It's unfortunate, but I mean, it is what it is. There's plenty of 57 Belvederes out there, and plazas and all that shit. But the question is, this time capsule, it's in a box. They're sort of trying to figure out what's inside it. They haven't opened it yet. I think it's going to happen later this week, or next week, sorry. Forgot this is Saturday. So there's thinking that there's a picture of Abraham Lincoln in his coffin inside there, which is really rare. I think, as far as I know, there's only 3 known photographs of that. So that would be really interesting to find out. I'm going to keep an eye on this story just because I'm really curious what's inside there. I mean, it's 1887, right? What else do you think would be in there? So we had this joke before we went on air. And I was like, I know what's in the box. I know exactly what's in the box. And they're like, what's that? Tony was like, what's in there? And I said, well, it's obvious. It's going to be tens of thousands of ballots for Donald Trump in the 2020 election that they hid in there so he would lose. And he almost spit his coffee out. And I thought, wait, maybe that's not it. Maybe inside that box is the incriminating evidence needed to prosecute Hillary Clinton. That's more likely, right? Maybe. Or better yet, the lost video footage to prove that Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. That could be in there. maybe the video of Harambe getting killed is in there. Right? I'm screwing around. It's X-Files stuff. We're just having fun with it. I'm sorry that I didn't have more poignant stuff, but anyway, this pedestal, this thing became famous because the amount of graffiti that was sprayed all over it out of hate. Right? Cancel culture is about getting rid of hate, and yet they littered the monument with hate. Society is very hypocritical, isn't it? And then they said, after they sprayed all this hate all over it, hey, don't tear it down. We should keep that as a monument towards fighting oppression or something like that. I forget. I think that's how they worded it, which is ridiculous. It's like monuments are supposed to be put up as reminders in history to remind you to either, honor those who did something or to never do that thing again. And they tore it down. And then they put up this. Like, what are they trying to remind us of? I take this stance all the time about this. There's a really famous quote by Morgan Freeman. And it said, racism will end when you stop referring to me as a black man and I stop referring to you as a white man. And I thought, clever. I sort of wanted to expand on that. And I thought, racism does not exist on an elementary school playground. It just doesn't. Not unless the parents are so despicable that they would brainwash a 5-year-old. But, by and large, racism does not exist on an elementary school playground. Kids just want to be kids. The only reason that this crap still comes up is because derelict retards keep bringing it back up. It'll go away if we stop teaching it.
Stop paying attention to it.
Exactly.
It's like the other thing with Morgan Freeman. Oh, by the way, hi.
Hi.
It's like what the other quote Morgan Freeman said. He's like, "Do you think I want a day for a month for African Americans? Do you want a day for Jewish, or like me, a Mexican? Do I want a day for Latin? No, I really don't care.
Yeah.
To be quite honest, like if I hear, oh, it's Latin History Month, that's like a novelty. You're bringing something that already people know, and then you attack on. Well, there's racism. Of course there is. But question is, who's speaking about it?
You know what it is? I think what it is society by and large.
Pander?
No, I was trying to think of a way to say this, but I think what it actually is society is so empty that it constantly needs validation. That's what it is. There's that saying in, let me pull it up because I want to get it right.
Well, you pull it up. The funny thing I find is when I hear about racism, and they're like, oh, it's only in America. Oh, you sweet summer child. You only think it's in America? Oh, you really haven't went across the border, have you?
Right.
Any border, really. Okay, in my country, Mexico, we don't have safe words for you. We don't.
Yeah, there's no safe space.
There's no safe space. And we have words worse than the ones that they say here about all sorts of people. For example, during World War II, what did they call the Japanese?
Nips.
In Japan, ojos cruzados, cross-eyed.
You're kind of roboting. It's funny though. Like, I think I know where you're going with that. People used to call Japanese nips.
You hear me now?
Yeah, they used to call them nips during World War II. But if you go to Japan, they're called nippon. So it's not really that far off, is it?
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at. Is like in Mexico, we call them ojos cruzados, cross-eyes.
Yeah.
That everyone would say it. No one's gonna be like, "Don't be racist." No, no, no. We say it. We see it as it is.
Yeah. Well,
We,
you know what's
we
pretty funny? Mexican sports, the boxing industry, has a profound respect for Japanese boxing.
oh yes,
They
there's respect, but we make fun of people though.
they
Respect
adore
is a
each other.
yeah.
Like, what's his name? Inoue. I think his name is Inoue. He's currently an active boxer. He fights in Mexico sometimes. Mexican fighters come and fight him sometimes. It's like there is a rich history and heritage between those two countries in boxing.
Well, yeah. The thing is that what I'm trying to say, I guess, is that once we take out racism and we stop looking at it, and we all, because Mexicans, let's be honest, Latin people in general, we make fun of each other, but we still hand you a beer.
Yeah. Yeah, I
You
mean,
can call me a racial slur, whatever you want, and if I like you and I talk to you, I'll give you a beer. And you'll be like wondering, but I just said this funny. He's like, bro, I got like 50 more words for you that are worse than what you just said. That's
right.
cute that you even started. That's even cute. That's so cute when you even started. At age 6, we're like, we say random retarded shit. What? There's not much really you can say.
Yeah.
I mean, but I feel like once we take that out and we just shoot the shit and like actually talk to people and not get butthurt, because apparently some white person out there is trying to fight for my historical blah blah blah, even though I know my historical stuff. And was he doing that a Mexican couldn't do? I feel like we just need to stop. We're a melting pot. We're the only country in the world that has this much diversity. Let's be quite honest.
I think
You
that's
got
why
Mex.
that's why we have the problems we have though. You see,
Yeah,
the thing
no, yeah,
is if you go to say Japan, right? Which I've been
no,
several
yeah,
times, um, they're still what you would consider a very homogeneous society. They
yeah, because
all
they're only like one
they're all
race.
together. They're
Well,
all sort of
yeah,
they're all the same, right? Now
yeah.
there are dialects in different regions like
Oh
Kanto
yeah,
and Osaka and Okinawa where you can see the differences,
oh
but
yeah,
by and large they're a homogeneous society, and racism doesn't quite exist on the same plane as it is here because they instead of picking a specific race, they're just more leery of just outsiders in general because they're a homogeneous society, right? In this country, we say, "Give us you're tired, you're poor, you're hungry. Come be one of us." Leave the nation you left behind. Come to the land of opportunity. We will give you opportunity. Make the best of it. And that theme is beautiful on an elemental level. The problem is you're cramming people together that were never around each other before they got here. So, like for instance, look at like the refugee programs, political refugees, asylum, stuff like that, right? So when I was growing up, I had a friend that lived a street over, and his family was from Bosnia. They were brought over here on a refugee visa because, the Bosnian War. They were brought to Houston, Texas. A large block of Bosnian families were dumped in Sharpstown, Texas, in Houston, Sharpstown area, Houston. And like all of a sudden, it was like they carved out this space, put all these people here, and say, okay, here you go, y'all deal with it, and walked away, right? Well, a year or two later, I met somebody else who was Serbian, and his family was brought over on a refugee visa. They were brought in a big block to Toronto, Canada. And they did the same thing. They carved out a space, they dumped him in there, and they were like, there you go, make the best of it. Now, here's the funny thing the Serbian family I know, doctors and architects, and then moved down to Texas. One guy's the father of that family is actually, he was a rocket scientist, literally. The Bosnian family, tradesmen, printing press, works with their hands, craftsmen, right? But it was like the same thing right now in my area, Houston. Afghani refugee program took a block of these folks, dropped them into Chinatown in Houston, and they were just like, deal with it. You
Yeah,
look
that's
at Sudanese people were dropped in, was it Minnesota? And they eventually elected Ilhan Omar, right? It was like, just deal with it. There's a lot of resentment that's built up over an entire block of people who have been dumped in on you and said, just deal with it. And I think that's probably a lot to do with, I guess, the bitterness of humanity. The thing I was going on about earlier, though, it was like the problem we have here is so bad because we try to um, quantify everything, and people constantly need validation, is what it is. You know, a person is smart, people are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. That's the quote I was looking for earlier. And it's right. The individual is brilliant. You put a group of individuals together, and you end up with stupid shit like the Astroworld tragedy in my town, where a bunch of people got trampled to death and stuck with a needle with a mysterious substance, which I still think is fentanyl, but the toxicology says otherwise. It said meth and cocaine or something. 9-year-old kid got killed because of that. But anyway, like I was saying, you know, they tore down a monument, then they graffitied what was left of it, and then they demanded we keep that there. A person was recently arrested and convicted for defacing graffiti on a street, on a public road. Like, you know how people were spray painting like Black Lives Matter on the street or whatever? Somebody came out and started like scraping it off or defacing it, doing burnouts on it or whatever, right? Arrested for that. First of all, you weren't supposed to paint it on the street. Like, you both did something criminal. And yet, only that guy got in trouble. Whatever. Anyway.
Well, one of the points I want to make is about Robert E. Lee on the
Yeah.
statue.
Because you wrote about this.
Yeah, was he was defaced, but was he taken off the statue or no?
Yeah, they took it off.
His statue.
Yeah, the 40-foot one in Virginia. It was like,
Yeah.
there was a huge stink about it a couple months ago because it was like
Yeah.
the biggest Confederate piece to fall, essentially. And that's when they found the time capsule, because it was actually in the base of the monument, and they would have never found it if they never took the monument off.
Well, ironically, right?
Yeah.
My point is, like, I wrote about Robert E. Lee, and when I hear people say, "Oh, he was a racist, slavery," and I kind of, because I read his memoirs, I did research on the guy. That was not initially what he went to this. He fought in the Civil War on the Confederate side's behalf. He fought because he didn't want to fight against his fellow Virginians.
Exactly.
He was given nearly almost head command of a entire battalion by the president.
He was actually offered the leader of the Union Army.
Well, yeah, I said battalion, but you get my point. But
Yeah.
So he was offered. That tells you something. He was well renowned.
He was picked over Ulysses S. Grant.
Exactly. So my point is, like, looking at his memoirs, where he plainly said, he says, if I could give up every slave for every life of a Confederacy, I would give up in a minute because of stopping the war.
Yeah.
If a guy who believed in racism, why? Obviously, we got the one part about today is that we're taking out of context the period of time.
Yeah.
And we're putting it at today's time. That's, as a historian, you don't do that. You don't make comparisons.
People are taught in elementary school about the Civil War. I was taught in elementary school about the Civil War. What it came up with when I was growing up was the Civil War was the North versus the South about slavery. Like, that's pretty much what we were told. And as I got older, the story began to change. It was, the Civil War was a secession of states that left the federal nation because they felt that federal overbearance was ruining the sovereignty of states' rights.
Yeah.
Now, so the Civil War was about states' rights versus federal overbearance. That made a lot more sense to me. Because, yes, slavery was a states' rights choice, and that was the principal thing that they were fighting for, sure, but it wasn't the sole reason.
Well, that's kind of my point. Was where you have to know the context of what's happening, because what the definition of a witch back in the Salem witch trials is different from now.
Yeah.
It just is. There is not even a comparison. And we kind of need to first look at that and dissect it and actually look at the people. Now, there's some people in history that you look at them and say, yeah, homie was just an evil bastard, period.
Sure.
You have to look at that. But my point is, you're taking down a statue you do not know nothing about. The only thing you know is Confederate general.
Slavery.
He was a brigadier general. Bad.
Racist.
He was for slavery.
Yeah.
He didn't join the Civil War for slavery. He joined the Civil War because he didn't want to kill fellow Virginians.
Yeah.
It's like saying me during the Spanish War between America and the U.S. Between Mexico and the U.S. back in the 1800s, 1900s. I can't remember right now. I'm
18.
drinking flu pills. But it's like saying, okay, well, I joined the Mexican side. Am I a traitor? No. Why did I join it? Because I don't want to kill my fellow Mexicans.
Yeah, it's loyalty.
Yes, exactly. Now, when you look at Robert E. Lee, he plain out said, I can't remember, after Fredericksburg, after Jackson was killed accidentally, he flat out said, this pretty much in essence, this war is useless. Literally, in every engagement Robert E. Lee engaged in, he was always outnumbered. He knew the war was going to end, and he flat out knew he wasn't going to win. But he was going to give his best shot, though.
Yep.
So I commend the man in terms of what he did in the Civil War, being against a lot of stuff, but for his ideals, not because he's all like slavery. He would literally give up every slave for if he could have peace and end this war and bloodshed. He really cared about his men, and
It's kind of,
to be honest, there's memoirs
to
about him
what,
that he didn't mistreat slaves or nothing.
he freed all his
quote me
slaves.
on this, huh?
He freed all his slaves.
That's what I was gonna say. So don't quote me, but he freed his slaves.
I think he even taught them how to read.
Well, from my understanding, is his wife taught a lot of the women to read, the kids to read, and he treated his, at the time, slaves better than most.
Yeah.
He has a unique respect. So it's hard to imagine when I hear on TV, Confederate generals said you've been pulled down because of racism. Really?
Yeah.
Really? You serious? He literally went to Ulysses S. Grant and surrendered. My statistics tells me, based on being out of all his engagements, being outnumbered, could he have won at Gettysburg? No, but he would give it his best shot if he believed in the cause. I'll get off my pedestal now.
It's okay. It's like I was just feeding you the rope. I was like, go for it, take it. Like I'm just fighting back, trying to cough. So
I just get irritated because when I compare Robert Lee to Pancho Villa, what would Mexicans consider him a? I don't know what Mexicans would consider him. Let's say the government considers him a racist. Let's say there's a lot of people in Mexico that looks at that statue and that man, the ideals, as like almost like God. And if you know more about him, he was trying to free the people. So my point is, look at your history. Look at what he actually said before you start putting a name on him, because I can say everyone is racist and have a reason for taking something down of theirs.
Sure.
If that makes sense. You don't even need a reason. You just need a cause that could be right or wrong. I just think it is led people who are led by ignorance just feed on to people's fear and what they're looking at now. That's what I think. And they're saying, oh, bad, this guy is bad. Take down his statue. Now, there's some statues of guys. Can't remember, what was the guy who did the Trail of Tears? I never really investigated this guy too much, but who was that? He was the president, wasn't he?
Wasn't that?
You talking about the event itself, or the person who actually?
Led it. But I know he was a president at one point, I think.
Andrew Jackson.
Andrew Jackson. He led the Trail of Tears, and with the Indians and moving them and stuff like that. I mean, once you know the history of that guy, then you can say, okay, yeah, he was douchebag. If that makes sense, that's a comparison. But
I really like 20 to 50 years from now, if with the way things are, the way that the education system's being changed, the way that monuments are torn down, the way that they keep trying to rewrite history, um, how are they going to teach the concept of manifest destiny in this country a generation or two from today?
well, one of the problems is that they're gonna have to literally rewrite history. That will rewrite history, like you said. But the problem is the ink is already, the person already wrote it. The ink is dried.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like what they did in Russia during the Russian Revolution. And I know there's a lot of those, but the one that actually succeeded with communism in the Communist Party, they tore down certain stuff and they rewrote certain things. I mean, pretty much similar to that, and pretty much in France too. They tore down certain generals. I don't think it was statues, but it was like those uh, where it's like cut between your torso and you see the face busts.
Yeah.
So they tore those down because the people were literally dying of hunger, and I don't know. It happens in every period of time. The only question is, can we evolve from that? And when we look at history, obviously, when you look at history, you just like laugh a little bit. Like, why did you do that? Pretty much in the future, it's going to be looking, try to rewrite history. And when they can't rewrite in the way they want to, they throw a hissy fit and they start a certain cause and they decide to do something about it. Like now.
I'm fairly certain that I think humanity is going to become what a lot of sci-fi movies are showing us, where it's not going to be about nations anymore. Like, for instance, you hear about the space race, right? So originally it was NASA, government-controlled space industry, and one thing that I didn't know until very recently, and I actually learned this on a Dark 5 video on YouTube. That guy is really clever. He does 5 instances of a subject he wants to talk about, and he gives you the whole background on it. He also does things called dark seas for Navy stuff. He does dark skies for aircraft stuff. He's brilliant. Um, during the space race, up until the 80s, right before the Challenger disaster, they had decided that they were going to look into civilian space travel. And after the Challenger blew up, they pulled the plug on it right up until modern day now. Now we have Blue Origin, and we got Virgin Galactic, and we've got, what's the other one called? There's 3 of them. Anyway.
What you call it? Star.
I'm not sure.
SpaceX.
SpaceX, that's it, right. So it's like, now we have privatized space travel, sort of. It's low Earth orbit or whatnot. It's going to get to the point where it's going to be like a sci-fi movie. There's going to be no nations anymore, because everyone's going to have to want to leave the planet collectively to do it, right? And it's whoever's going to be able to pay. And your new factions will be corporations. I mean, we look at it now. We've got the 3. We've got SpaceX, we've got Blue Origin, and we've got Virgin Galactic. 3 corporations already. That's what it's going to turn into. And then what's really scary is, once humanity branches out into space like that, human life will have no value. Period. At all. Because you bust the hull of that ship and you're gonna get sucked out of a little hole like in Aliens Resurrection. Like, your life, human life will become so fragile and valueless in space. But it's also every failure is going to put it, that evolution 10 years behind because of how slow it is for us to get to certain places. Anyway, like one of the coolest things that that chick actually showed me was a movie called the Europa Report, and it's kind of a bleak ending. And then I was going to respond to her movie with a movie called Stowaway, which is a pretty much same type of movie, but it was made this year by Anna Kendrick of all people. But anyway, that's kind of where we're at. Like, we're doomed if we still fight over such prehistoric things. Like, imagine if humanity was colorblind like dogs. Then we wouldn't have these problems. A lot of them.
Dogs
On-
aren't exactly colorblind. I mean, also like they can still see like shades.
Well,
They can
yeah,
still see
but what I'm
light.
saying is if we had monochromatic vision, then that's one less petty thing for humanity to dwell on. But I mean, then again, we've got China and Russia currently banding together. Like, geopolitically right now, we are in very dangerous times. This is how world wars have started. The thing is in World War One, it took a small event in a small country to trigger nations to pick sides and then go to war, right? The death of what was it?
I mean, they already picked their sides, but like
That's the difference.
the
Now
the assassination was like just the
it was like the turning point that
spark
made them
that,
act on it, right?
Yep, that was just a spark that blew up the fucking.
But this current thing that's going on, they're publicly picking sides now, and the event has yet to happen. So a couple of years ago, I would have told you the same thing. I'd have been like, a small event in a small country is going to trip something that people will choose sides and fight a war over. And we discussed this at length in the lobby before of what that would be. And the one that I came up with was Saudi Arabia attacks Yemen. It's a small country. It seems insignificant, right? Or better yet, like if that didn't play out, Iranian Navy sinks a container cargo ship in the Suez Canal and blocks it. That would be something like that, right? Or in this case,
Well,
China sends artillery across into Taiwan and attacks Taiwan immediately following the Winter Olympics in February. Like, a lot of people are saying that the festivities of war are going to kick off right after the Winter Olympics. But we're putting the cart before the horse this time. People are choosing sides before the event. But you can see where the staging is. The border of the Ukraine, pressure on Taiwan, threats against Australia for intervening if they do intervene, things like that. And it's like, which one's going to be the moment? All of a sudden, terrorism doesn't seem like it's even on the radar geopolitically anymore,
yep.
even though Afghanistan is turning into a slaughter. And Jen Psaki is still being pushed into a corner about Americans that are still trapped there. Where's my MRAP?
Yeah, where's my MRAP?
Where's my
Probably
MRAP?
right.
That should be the new hashtag. Where's my MRAP?
Yeah, probably being like used by the fucking ISIS
Slightly
killing.
used, may need to hose out the visage from the back of the last guy that was in it or something. I don't know. All right, so anyway, so I have run out of stories. I guess I can add this little caveat story, though. Has anyone read or found out what was actually released about the Kennedy assassination files this week?
That he got a hole blown in his head.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, for instance, it came up about 3 or 4 days ago,
Yeah.
and they had Geraldo Rivera, and they were interviewing Geraldo Rivera, because now I didn't know this. Like, I know he's been in journalism pretty much his whole life, and he's in his late 70s, I think now, maybe early 80s by now. And to be honest, he actually looks good for his age, if you think about it. But he was the first person to air the Zapruder video back in 1975. And when he told the story, it was pretty amazing because he said he was working for NBC at the time he caught a bootleg copy of the video because it was snatched up by the family, and they said they would sue anybody who tried to air it. So he got the Zapruder video bootleg, and he was like, America needs to see this. I'm going to show you this tonight. Before he was allowed to do that, the executives at NBC said, we will let you do this, but you need to sign a release form saying that any lawsuit that will guaranteed hit you has nothing to do with the station. So he signed it, and he aired it. And yes, he did get sued. And I think he did lose. But it was too late. The damage was done. The video was out. So it kind of makes you wonder.
Like the video of Kennedy getting shot? Or...
Yeah. And he was talking about, when he first saw the video, he was convinced that there was a second shooter. And then in his interview a couple days ago, he turns around and he goes, I think Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. One of the things that I do know came out in all that, in the release this week, was there was surveillance on Lee Harvey Oswald, and he had met with very high Russian officials. And they can't say that he was instructed by the Russian officials to do what he did, but they can also say that the Russians didn't try to talk him out of it. They were like, well, if he told them what he was going to do, they were just like, cool, whatever, wink. Like, they didn't tell him what to do. They just said, whatever. Which I think is kind of shitty. But it makes you wonder, like, I was hoping somebody else would know what else came out. Because that would be awesome.
You're talking the height of the Cold War. And he went to the Russians. He lived in Russia.
He married a Russian.
Yeah. This is the height of the Cold War. Would the U.S. even let him back in the country without being arrested?
Yes.
Unless...
But he'd be under surveillance.
Unless he was working for a certain agency that shall not be named.
OSS?
No, that didn't exist at the time.
I thought the OSS was before the CIA.
Yeah, OSS was World War II.
Oh, okay.
So, here's the thing. Was he a plant by the CIA to try and feed the Russians misinformation, and it came to bite the CIA back in the end?
Oh, so they liquidated their asset. I gotcha.
Which, let's face it, the CIA has a fucking habit of doing.
Yeah.
Osama bin Laden, anyone?
Yeah. But freaking, what's his name? Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein, good example too.
Muammar Gaddafi.
Gaddafi's son is like coming up like Libyan elections or something.
Really? Wait, he has one that's still on this side of the grass? Or sand? Because wasn't two of his kids killed? Uday and Kusei?
Like, I don't know, bro.
Isn't it crazy that I remember those names?
One of his sons survived. Oh, and also, like, that to, the wife of, like, Marcos, like, the Philippine dictator.
Yeah.
She's also, like, a fucking senator now, I think, or something.
Well, anyway. So,
Well, yeah.
we are a week removed from Christmas, which means we're 2 weeks removed away from New Year's, which means we are 10 weeks away from the Winter Olympics. It's in Beijing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the United States will send their athletes, because it's not the athletes' fault, but they will not send their political emissaries, which is supposedly an insult. But several countries agreed to do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just the Five Eyes now, and
Yeah.
like just the Anglo countries like U.S., Canada, New Zealand, the UK. So 5 nations. I don't know if anyone else agreed to.
Oh,
send
yes.
their-
I do have an announcement, Sean.
Oh,
It's fucking snowing.
I'm just getting
Oh,
rain.
yes, it's snowing here too.
Well, with
Oh,
8 inches of snow today.
8?
Yeah.
I just got rain and wind. Like, I'm concerned that the power's going to go out, but
Well, I mean, you're in Texas, like niggas in like New England, like it's like 2 feet.
Yeah.
Hey, it's just like another Sunday. They'll like go around in their Honda Civics, but like in Texas, like fucking Stone Edge. Oh shit! Like the Texas
shut down the
state has no
whole
power.
city. Oh, that reminds me. Okay. So I do have a local story for you. I don't have a picture to show you, but I'll just tell you the story. So this story is now 8 days old. No, sorry, 7 days old. And what it was is the national news, like Fox and all the other outlets, they put up a story saying that the mayor of Houston, Sylvester Turner, and the county judge, Lena Hidalgo, which most of us called Dora the Explorer, who only won her office because she paid the application fee. She never campaigned. She won by straight ticket votes only. Both of them are under federal investigation for stimulus and relief fund fraud to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, here's the funny part. They're the ones who imposed all the lockdowns. They're the ones who put thousands of businesses in this city underground. They're the ones who kept pushing mask mandates and code red and all this other bullshit, right? The mayor announced yesterday that he just tested positive for COVID. And he's under investigation. My local news has yet to cover the story. They refuse to post the story about the mayor and the county judge. They're covering for them. Because Houston city proper is a blue city. And all the news outlets are pretty much liberal interests. And they will not post the story. In the comments, every time I go and read the news there, I put in the comment, I'm like, so when are you guys going to actually have real journalistic integrity and start posting the stories that all the other nation news has been covering for the last week? Like, when are you going to start covering the story that's in your own backyard? Like, whoever works at this local news station, they need to fire their editor immediately. Like, they can't even do basic grammatical checks and spelling errors. It's crazy.
Well, yeah, like they do the same thing here.
It's like, who the hell do you have on pay? And then those are the same people who turn around and go rub elbows with other people like the mayor who isn't wearing their masks during their lockdowns and eating $400 dinners. And they don't even have to spell correctly.
They're like paying like 5-year-olds like to write stories, and now they're like.
I got banned from that news site for a week because I posted a picture of the room full of typewriting monkeys that Montgomery Burns hired to write Steven Spielberg's movie. Remember that?
Yeah.
They were all wearing hats backwards and shit. Yeah, I posted that. I was like, just another day at Channel 2 News.
They are hiring like typewriting monkeys, and now they're complaining, hey, no one's watching our shit.
Oh, yeah. See, there's another thing. Chris Wallace left Fox after, was it 18 years? And he said that he was going to go, seek new ventures for journalism. And I thought, okay, he's tired of doing the same thing every day. He wants to do something different. And just for fun, I jokingly said, I wonder if he's moving to CNN. Well, 6 hours later, it was confirmed that he moved to CNN's streaming service.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, he is sort of a liberal trader, isn't he? He did sort of steer the presidential debates quite a bit in Biden's favor, didn't he? I wonder if he was run out on a rail or if he was just told, we will not be renewing your contract. I suspect that's what it is. I think Fox said, we're not renewing your contract. You're gonna have to go find another job, but we'll let you amicably leave. That's the only thing I can think of. But anyway, yeah, he's gonna start doing CNN streaming service. Oh, and another person who did? Do you remember I was telling you about Police Chief Art Kiss My Ass Avedo? He was like a California lib who came to Houston and ruined it as police chief in a couple of years. and then he decided that his work here is done, and then he went to Miami, and he was fired within 6 weeks. Guess where he is now? This is CNN. He is now a commentator on CNN. It's like, oh, he finally hit the big time. Jumping onto a sinking ship.
Well, they got to have a counter voice to, what's his name? The black sheriff. That's a conservative.
The guy from Arizona?
I don't know if he was from Arizona. I thought he was from somewhere else. But...
He always wore cowboy hats with the sheriff's logo on it? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the sheriff in Arizona. I think.
Used to be, I think. They needed somebody to counter him.
David Clark.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got that wrong. He was from Wisconsin. Really appreciable beardage. Anyway, yeah. All right, so I guess we'll go into the final segment. What's going on for you guys the rest of the weekend?
I have applied for like translating jobs because my current job kind of sucks.
Nice.
So like my current job like pays like fucking. So like after like taxes and healthcare, like, I only get like $1,600 per month, and I work like 45 hours, and it takes like two hours a day to commute, and also like I have no free time, and like I have to sleep when I come home. So like it's kind of shit.
Plus eye strain.
Huh?
Plus eye strain staring at screens all day.
Oh yeah, like
Yeah.
my job is like inspecting cell phones and like package them and like do paperwork to like export them. Yes.
Huawei never crosses your desk.
Oh yeah.
Does?
Oh, Huawei?
It does?
No, it doesn't. Like
Oh.
it's like that. It's like 80% Samsung and 20% iPhone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like.
Oh,
Yeah.
I need you to find a way to export a Kia out of the country.
A Kia?
Yeah.
I can do that for you if you want.
Well,
But one thing, like, even here, like, you can't buy new cars. Like, there's like a fucking year wait list. So.
Well, this is kind of a weird one.
Yeah,
So,
like if you want new, yeah.
in another lifetime, I had built a lot of Jeeps, kind of fresh out of high school type thing, and I'm gonna see if I can find a picture of one of my last ones because it's actually noteworthy. Here, okay, open. All right, it's just gonna be an MS Paint picture, so bear with me. Or I just opened it in it, but once upon a time, I built stuff like this. And they only made them for 3 years at the time. It was called a Kaiser Jeep M715.
Yeah.
And it was a 5/4 ton military truck. Now, it only had it had one of the first production overhead cam engines made, but it was an overhead cam straight 6, so it wasn't very powerful, but it was good enough. It did the job. And yeah, like I built a couple of these. That's actually one of the last ones I built there. And it's got a Cummins turbo diesel and an NV5600 and an Atlas II transfer case and a Dana 70 front and 60 or 80 rear. So it's like it was a monster. Anyway, fast forward to today. They stopped making them in '69. And what it ended up happening is that this was built post-Korean War. This was going into Vietnam, so these things served in Vietnam. Well, Korea decided that they wanted to build those, so they bought the licensing manufacturing rights to it. And Kia calls it the KM45, and they still make it to this day. Now, it's been modified a little bit, like the grill's different, but the overall vehicle physically is still the same. And we've been, like in my Jeep circles, we've been asking, hey, how come we can't get these over here? So I went to my local Kia dealer and I talked to the general manager and I said, listen, you guys build a vehicle that's not in the United States. Could you look into it? And he goes, sure, what's it called? So I told him the KM45 and he goes, you're a Jeep guy, aren't you? And I looked at him, I'm like, what? And he goes, I have an M715. And I was like, you're my guy. So what's the deal? And he was like, well, technically we can't import them here. I'm like, why not? And he gave me some long-winded reason. But yeah, you guys still make those. And apparently your military still uses them. So it's kind of cool.
It's called the KM45?
KM45.
Oh, KM45.
Like Kia Motors 45, I guess. But it's pretty neat. And if they ever actually did consider bringing them over to the United States, there'd be, offhand, they'd sell at least 100,000 of them. Like, no problem. People would buy that thing up quick. Because the Gladiator that we're being sold today is hashtag not my Gladiator. It's a Jeep Scrambler with an identity crisis. Trans-scramblerism.
I thought you wanted that Russian SUV.
Oh, the T98 Combat? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to have that.
Is it called a KM450?
Maybe. Screen share it real quick.
Okay.
Like, it's got a flat windshield, and it's got big fender flares, and it's probably sitting on at least 36-inch tires. It's a pretty good-sized truck. Usually got a stake bed in the back.
Screen share. Okay. I am live.
Let's take a look.
Special vehicle. Is it this thing?
It's still loading. Yep, that's the one.
Okay.
That is the one.
I don't know if they still make these. Like recently, the military has been buying like new new vehicles. Like what's the newest one to be able?
It is pretty wicked though. Like I was happy as hell to see that they were actually still making those. I was like, oh my god. Oh, see, these guys are getting a lesson in Hangul right now.
Well, I mean, I guess it's.
Oh. Yeah, there it is.
They might be still making these, I guess.
Yeah, because it's the lightest truck out of that whole line there. It's the 1.25 tons.
Well, well, nowadays, like they're getting like these like, future-looking Humvees, like, so they're like what you call it, modular. So it can be used like as like a normal car. You can put like IED and armor panels on it.
Sure.
Also like serve as like a AT missile carrier. A lot of other things. They're getting like these newer looking like missile vehicles.
That looks a lot like an Oshkosh
too. This is just a civilian car, but just painted. Okay. I guess for cargo stuff, they're still using the legacy vehicles. This is like a new one. They started making this.
2017.
Making this from 17.
That one right there with the ambulance package on it, just below.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So that's basically the modernized version of what they used to call the M725. Same truck, it's just got a utility ambulance bed on the back.
Yes. So like these are probably like just American cars, but they just gave them a Korean model number So like this is the A1 version.
Yeah.
It's like the old ones got too old and got too many miles, and also like jarheads are using them. So they make new ones from 2005. So I guess you could still. They still make these, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, even if they stopped making them in '05, that's only 16 years. Whereas if you try to find an original,
they started making them in '05.
oh, okay, so they started making them 16 years ago. Okay,
Yeah.
so like, yeah, that's like way better because I mean, out here, the newest one you can find is 1969, and by then, you know, it's clapped out, and it's got split rims on it still, which are dangerous. Like they will kill you.
So your Kia dealer, like, what kind of like reason did he give? Oh, you can't import them.
Basically, yeah, it was like we can't do the importation on it or whatever because it's not something that they have brought over for like EPA testing, crash safety testing, yada yada yada. It's sort of like when you ask somebody, can you import over an R34 Nissan Skyline? It's the same principle. Now, if it's over 25 years old, you can import it in, but up until then, you know, health and safety and emissions and all that other BS. So.
I mean, military cars still use like the like DIV fluid or something. Like, they.
I mean, I'm pretty sure if I'm actually going to buy something like that, realistically, I talked to Squid about this.
Fluid.
Yeah, the sheep wee.
Yeah, yeah, like military trucks nowadays, they like they're. Well, I mean these new ones are pretty much like civilian cars.
Yeah, just built
Like,
up a little thicker and heavier.
Yep. The old ones are, well, I don't know a lot about cars though.
It's okay. Somebody's got to. All right. Anyway, we have wound up way longer than I thought we would ever do today, which is kind of surprising.
You're streaming?
Yeah. You didn't know.
Okay.
Surprise.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm going to play this. The rest of my week, I already know Scott's. He's going to go ammo shopping. Jaime, he's catching his death, and so am I, so I'm going to be hopped up on Dayquil and NyQuil. What I'll be doing later is recording a new game for the Penny Arcade, Terminator Resistance. Finally, a shooter game. So keep an eye out for that. If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're a regular here, welcome back. Either way, hit the old like button, maybe subscribe, maybe share it with a friend. If you want to join the show or the server, hit me up in the email in the description below, and I'll send you a one-time invite code so you can join us. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I think we will do a Christmas special. I haven't decided if it'll be a pre-record or what. I'll see what everyone else is doing. But until then, we'll see you next week. And we'll see you later. And I totally messed up that ending, didn't I?
Yep.
Later.